I never thought my antique sewing box would be at the center of the most terrifying day of my life. When my daughter Amanda slipped something inside it during Sunday dinner, my heart nearly stopped. 40 years of motherly instinct told me something was terribly wrong. I pretended not to notice, but once she turned away, I checked inside and found what appeared to be drugs. Without hesitation, I moved the package to her car. The look of panic on her face when she couldn't find it was nothing compared to my shock when police sirens filled our quiet street 40 minutes later. For most of my 68 years, I prided myself on building a loving family. My husband Walter and I raised our daughter Amanda in this very house, a modest 3-bedroom colonial in Fairfield, Connecticut that we purchased when Walter began his engineering career. We watched Amanda grow from a stubborn toddler into a confident woman who now, at 41, had established herself as one of the top real estate agents in our county. She married Jackson, a soft-spoken accountant, 13 years ago, and they blessed us with 2 wonderful grandchildren, Penny and Thomas, now 15 and 12. Sunday dinners at our house had been a tradition since Amanda moved into her own home. Every week, I would prepare roast chicken or pot roast. Walter would set the table with our good china, and we would spend the afternoon catching up on everyone's lives. It was the highlight of our week, watching Penny talk about her dance recitals or Thomas explain his latest science project with the same enthusiasm Walter had shown for his own engineering work before retirement. But in recent months, something had changed. Amanda had canceled 3 Sunday dinners, claiming work emergencies or migraines. When she did attend, she appeared distracted, constantly checking her phone and stepping away for what she called important client calls. Walter hadn't noticed the changes, but I had watched my daughter grow up learning every expression on her face. The slight furrow between her brows, the way she bit her lower lip, the constant tapping of her fingernails against her phone screen, all told me something was wrong. I also couldn't help noticing she had lost weight. Her cheekbones seemed more pronounced, and the tailored blazer she typically wore to Sunday dinners hung loosely from her shoulders. When I mentioned it, suggesting I could make her favorite chocolate cake, she brushed off my concern with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Just been busy with work, Mom. The spring market is crazy this year." This particular Sunday seemed no different at first. Amanda arrived with Jackson and the kids, bringing a store-bought apple pie and excuses about not having time to bake. Throughout the afternoon, I watched her check her phone more than 20 times, stepping away frequently and speaking in hushed tones. Jackson seemed oblivious, deep in conversation with Walter about retirement investments and the stock market. After dinner, as Walter showed Jackson and the kids his new workshop in the garage, Amanda excused herself to use the bathroom. But instead of turning toward the hallway bathroom, I noticed her slipping into my craft room, where I kept my collection of sewing supplies and fabric. My curiosity piqued. I quietly followed her, stopping just outside the partially open door. Through the crack, I could see Amanda standing near my oak cabinet, lifting the lid of my cherished sewing box, a wedding gift from my mother nearly 50 years ago. With trembling hands, she withdrew a small plastic bag from her pocket and carefully tucked it beneath the pincushion and thread spools. I froze, my hand covering my mouth to stifle a gasp. The bag contained what looked like white powder and several small pills. My mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. My Amanda, my responsible, successful daughter, hiding drugs in my sewing box? It seemed impossible, like something from one of those crime shows Walter watched in the evenings. Amanda glanced nervously at the door, and I quickly stepped back into the shadows of the hallway. I heard the soft click of the sewing box closing, followed by her footsteps approaching the door. I hurried to the kitchen, pretending to be busy with the dishes when she emerged. "Need any help with those, Mom?" she asked, her voice higher than normal. No. You go on and spend time with the kids," I answered, amazed at how steady my own voice sounded, despite the hammering of my heart. As Amanda rejoined the family in the living room, I stood frozen at the sink, my hands submerged in soapy water. The image of that plastic bag replayed in my mind. What was my daughter involved in? And why would she hide whatever it was in my sewing box of all places? Throughout my entire adult life, I had been proud of the values Walter and I instilled in Amanda. We taught her honesty, responsibility, and the importance of making good choices. She had been class president in high school, graduated with honors from college, and built a successful career through hard work and determination. Never once had we worried about drugs or alcohol. The few times she had gotten into trouble as a teenager involved staying out past curfew to study with friends or arguing about which college would best suit her ambitious goals. Now, standing in my kitchen with soap bubbles sliding down my wrists, I tried to rationalize what I had seen. Perhaps it wasn't drugs. Maybe it was some kind of supplement or medication she was embarrassed about taking. Maybe she was having fertility issues and didn't want to discuss them at family dinner. My mind created a dozen innocent explanations, none of which quite matched the secretive, nervous behavior I had witnessed. I dried my hands on a kitchen towel and glanced through the doorway to the living room. Amanda sat on the couch next to Penny, looking at something on her daughter's phone, but her smile seemed forced. She kept glancing toward the hallway that led to my craft room, as if worried someone might go in there. "Walter, could you help me with something in the garage?" I called out, needing a moment alone with my husband. He looked up from his conversation with Jackson, clearly confused. "Right now?" "Yes, please," I insisted, trying to communicate with my eyes that it was important. Once in the garage, surrounded by Walter's neatly organized tools, I opened my mouth to tell him what I had seen. But something stopped me. What if I was wrong? What if there was a reasonable explanation? Accusing our daughter of hiding drugs could damage our relationship beyond repair if I was mistaken. "What's going on, Mabel?" Walter asked, concern etching deeper lines into his already weathered face. I hesitated. "Have you noticed anything strange about Amanda lately?" Walter shrugged. "She seems a little stressed. Probably work. You know how she gets during the busy season?" His dismissive response frustrated me. Walter had always been somewhat oblivious to the emotional undercurrents in our family, focusing instead on practical matters. It was one of the reasons our partnership worked so well for nearly 50 years. We complemented each other's strengths and weaknesses. "I'm going to check on dessert," I said, leaving him looking puzzled in the garage. Instead of heading to the kitchen, I made a detour to my craft room. My hands trembled as I opened the sewing box. Lifting the pincushion, I found exactly what I had feared, a plastic bag containing white powder and several small blue pills. My stomach clenched. In all my 68 years, I had never touched illegal drugs, but I had seen enough news stories to recognize what appeared to be cocaine and prescription pills. I heard a noise and quickly closed the box. Turning around, I saw Thomas standing in the doorway. "Grandma, Mom says it's time for dessert," he said, his innocent eyes showing no awareness of my distress. "Tell her I'll be right there, sweetheart," I managed to reply with a smile that felt like it might crack my face. After Thomas left, I reopened the sewing box and removed the bag, slipping it into the pocket of my cardigan. I needed time to think, to decide what to do. Confronting Amanda in front of the family seemed wrong, but I couldn't simply ignore what I had found. When I returned to the living room, Amanda was checking her phone again. She had left it on the side table while helping Penny with something, and as I passed by, the screen lit up with a text message. I shouldn't have looked. I had always respected my daughter's privacy, but fear for her well-being overrode my principles. The message, clearly visible, read, "Need product by 9 p.m. Tony's waiting. 10K on delivery. Don't mess up again." My blood turned to ice in my veins. This wasn't just about personal use. The amount of money mentioned suggested something far more serious. Was my daughter involved in drug dealing? The thought was so outlandish, so completely at odds with everything I knew about Amanda, that I nearly laughed out loud from the sheer absurdity. But the evidence was becoming harder to deny. I served apple pie with vanilla ice cream, going through the motions while my mind raced. Amanda barely touched her dessert, checking her watch repeatedly. Jackson, still oblivious, chatted happily with Walter about plans to build a treehouse for Thomas. "We should probably head out soon," Amanda announced, interrupting their conversation. "The kids have school tomorrow, And I have an early showing. But we just started dessert, Walter protested. I know, Dad, but it's getting late. Amanda stood up, already gathering her things. As she walked to the coat closet, I made my decision. I couldn't let my daughter leave with those drugs. Not when she was clearly under pressure to deliver them to someone. Whatever trouble she was in, it would only get worse if she went through with this deal. My mind raced as Amanda helped Penny put on her jacket. Jackson was loading leftover containers I had packed for them into a tote bag, while Walter showed Thomas some old baseball cards in the den. I had perhaps 2 minutes to act. The plastic bag felt heavy in my cardigan pocket, a physical manifestation of the weight on my heart. What would Walter think if he knew? What about my grandchildren? The thought of Penny and Thomas being around drugs, or the kind of people who dealt them, sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the spring evening air. I slipped out the front door, using the excuse of checking the weather. Amanda's silver SUV was parked in our driveway behind Jackson's sedan. With shaking hands, I used the spare key Amanda had given us for emergencies to unlock her vehicle. I quickly placed the bag in the console between the front seats, beneath some tissues and breath mints, then locked the car and hurried back inside before anyone could notice my absence. It's getting chilly out there, I announced as I re-entered the house, trying to sound normal despite my racing heart. You might want to grab sweaters for the kids. Amanda nodded absently, her attention focused on her phone again. I noticed a sheen of sweat on her forehead despite the cool temperature. She looked pale and fidgety, her eyes darting to the hallway leading to my craft room. I think I left my earring in the bathroom, she said suddenly. Mom, can I check your craft room too? I might have dropped it when I was looking at your new fabric. The lie came so easily to her lips that I felt a stab of disappointment sharper than any I had experienced in our relationship. Who had my daughter become? Of course, honey, I replied, watching as she hurried down the hallway. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of drawers opening and closing with increasing urgency. When Amanda returned, her face had lost all color. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine, she snapped, then immediately softened her tone. Sorry, Mom, just tired. Did you happen to go into your sewing box today? I was organizing some buttons earlier, I lied, hating myself for the deception but seeing no alternative. Why do you ask? No reason, Amanda replied too quickly. I just noticed it was open a bit. Her eyes scanned the room nervously, then darted to her purse sitting on the entryway table. Following her gaze, I noticed something I hadn't before, a corner of another plastic bag peeking out from the half-open purse. My heart sank further. There were more drugs involved than what she had hidden in my sewing box. As the family prepared to leave, I gave Amanda an extra long hug. You know you can tell me anything, right? I whispered, giving her one last chance to confide in me. For a moment, I thought she might break down. Her eyes welled with tears, and she clutched my arms with surprising strength. Then Jackson called her name, and the moment passed. I know, Mom. I'm fine, just busy. After they drove away, I sank onto the couch, emotionally exhausted. Walter brought me a cup of tea and sat beside me, his presence comforting despite his obliviousness to the situation. I think something's really wrong with Amanda, I finally said, unable to keep my concerns to myself any longer. Walter patted my hand. You worry too much, Mabel. She's a grown woman with a stressful job and teenagers at home. Of course she's going to seem a bit frazzled sometimes. I wanted to tell him about the drugs, about the text message, about all of it, but something held me back. Perhaps it was the memory of Amanda's face when I offered her a chance to confide in me the fear and desperation I had glimpsed beneath her carefully maintained facade. I'm going to clean up the craft room, I said, rising from the couch. Walter nodded absently, already reaching for the TV remote. In the craft room, I searched thoroughly, worried Amanda might have hidden more drugs. I found nothing in the obvious places, but then noticed my basket of fabric scraps had been disturbed. Digging through it, my fingers closed around a small notebook bound in black leather. I had never seen it before. It certainly wasn't mine. Opening it, I discovered pages of names, numbers, and dates. Some names had stars beside them, others had been crossed out. Each entry included an amount ranging from $1,000 to $15,000. With growing horror, I recognized some of the names parents from Penny and Thomas's school. Patricia Anderson, whose daughter was in Penny's dance class. David Wilson, who coached Thomas's baseball team. Sarah Jenkins, the PTA president. My hand flew to my mouth as the implications became clear. Amanda wasn't just using drugs, she appeared to be selling them, and to parents from her children's school. How had this happened? When had my daughter, my successful, responsible Amanda, become involved in something so dangerous and illegal? I sat heavily in my sewing chair, the notebook clutched in my trembling hands. I needed to talk to Walter, to show him what I had found. We needed a plan to help Amanda before she destroyed her life and possibly the lives of her family. Just as I was about to call for Walter, my phone rang. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. Mom, her voice sounded frantic. Did I leave my small black notebook at your house? It's really important. I haven't seen any notebook, I lied, hating the ease with which deception now came to me. Where do you think you left it? I don't know, Amanda's voice cracked with panic. Maybe in the craft room? Or near the couch? It's really important, Mom. Work-related. I'll look for it and call you back, I promised, then ended the call. Walter appeared in the doorway, concern etching deeper lines around his eyes. Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I held up the notebook. Walter, we need to talk about Amanda. Over the next 30 minutes, I showed him everything the notebook, told him about the drugs I had found and moved to her car, and the text message I had seen. At first, he refused to believe it, suggesting elaborate alternative explanations, but as the evidence mounted, his denial gave way to stunned silence. We need to confront her, he finally said, his voice hollow with disappointment. Call her back. Tell her to come over alone. What about Jackson and the kids? Tell her we found something important she needs to see. Just her, not the whole family. I called Amanda, my voice steadier than I expected. She agreed to return immediately, saying Jackson would stay home with the children. While we waited, Walter paced the living room, occasionally stopping to stare at the family photos on the mantel, as if searching for clues about where we had gone wrong as parents. I sat clutching my teacup, the liquid long since gone cold. 20 minutes later, Amanda's SUV pulled into our driveway. She practically ran to the front door, her face pale and drawn. As soon as she entered, her eyes darted around the room. Did you find it? She asked without preamble. Walter held up the notebook. We found everything, Amanda. Her face crumpled. Dad, I can explain. Explain what? I asked, rising from my seat. Explain why you're hiding drugs in my sewing box. Explain why you have a notebook filled with names and payment amounts. Explain why you're getting texts about delivering product for $10,000. Amanda sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. For a moment, the only sound in the room was her ragged breathing. When she looked up, tears streaked her face. I didn't want you to know, she whispered. I never wanted you involved in this. Involved in what? Walter demanded, his voice uncharacteristically harsh. Drug dealing? Is that what our daughter has become, a drug dealer? It's not what you think, Amanda protested. Then what is it? I asked, sitting beside her on the couch. Help us understand, because right now, all the evidence points to something terrible. Amanda took a deep, shuddering breath. It started 6 months ago. A parent from the kids' school, Tony Mercer, approached me after a PTA meeting. He seemed nice at first, interested in buying a property I had listed. We exchanged numbers, had coffee a few times to discuss real estate. She paused, twisting her wedding ring anxiously. Then one day, he showed me some old photos from college. Pictures of me at parties, taking prescription pills that weren't mine. Nothing major, just Adderall during finals, but still illegal. He said he'd show them to my broker, to the real estate board, to everyone at the kids' school unless I helped him. Blackmail, Walter muttered, his face darkening with anger. Amanda nodded miserably. At first it was just delivering packages to people. I didn't even know what was in them. Then he started making me collect money. When I tried to back out, he threatened the kids. Said he knew their schedules, knew when they were alone. My blood ran cold at the thought of someone threatening my grandchildren. The notebook was his idea, she continued. To keep track of who paid and how much. The names are all parents from school. He's targeting them, specifically people with good jobs, reputations to protect. The stars mark the ones who are falling behind on payments. And the drugs in my sewing box? I asked. Amanda's shoulders slumped. Tony said I needed to hide them somewhere safe. He's been getting paranoid, thinks people are watching his house. He made me take them today, said I had to deliver everything tonight to a new location. When I couldn't find them in your sewing box, I thought maybe you had found them and called the police. I moved them to your car, I admitted. I was afraid for you, for the kids. Amanda's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear. You what? You put them in my car? Mom, you don't understand. Tony is dangerous. If I don't deliver those drugs tonight, he'll. Her phone buzzed, cutting off her words. She glanced at the screen and visibly paled. It's him. He's on his way here, right now. Here? Walter exclaimed. Why would he come here? I told him I might have left the notebook at your house, Amanda admitted. He's furious, says I've compromised everything. Call the police, Walter said firmly, reaching for his phone. No, Amanda grabbed his arm. You don't understand. Tony has connections. He'll know if we call the police, and he'll hurt the kids. What kind of connections could this man possibly have? I asked. Amanda looked at me, her eyes reflecting a fear so profound it took my breath away. Tony Mercer isn't just some drug dealer, Mom. He's a cop, a detective in the narcotics division. That's why he's never been caught. That's why he knows if anyone reports him. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. A police officer, the very people we were supposed to turn to for help, was the one threatening my family. The world tilted beneath me, as everything I thought I knew about safety and justice seemed to crumble. A police officer? Walter repeated, his face ashen with shock. Are you absolutely certain? Amanda nodded grimly. I've seen his badge, his gun. He uses his position to identify vulnerable parents, people with small secrets or past mistakes he can leverage. Then he forces them to distribute drugs for him or purchase them. If they refuse, he threatens to plant evidence and arrest them. This is impossible, Walter muttered, running a hand through his thinning gray hair. How can someone sworn to uphold the law do something so corrupt? Because he knows the system from the inside, Amanda explained, her voice steadier now that everything was in the open. He knows how to avoid detection, how to manipulate evidence, and he has partner officers who either look the other way or are involved themselves. My mind raced through possibilities. We need to contact someone higher up in law enforcement. The state police, maybe, or the FBI. With what evidence? Amanda countered. It's my word against his. A real estate agent versus a decorated detective. And if we try and fail, he'll make good on his threats to hurt Penny and Thomas. Her voice broke. I can't risk my children, Mom. Walter paced the room, his engineer's mind clearly working through the problem methodically. If we had concrete evidence of his crimes, we could bypass the local police entirely. The notebook, I said suddenly. And the drugs. Together they're evidence of his operation. Amanda shook her head. Not enough. The notebook doesn't have his name anywhere in it. He was too careful for that. And he could claim the drugs were mine, that I'm trying to frame him because he was investigating me. Her phone buzzed again. With trembling hands, she checked the message. He's 5 minutes away. What are we going to do? Walter disappeared into his study and returned moments later with an old tape recorder. We'll get him to confess, he said, placing the device on the bookshelf and covering it with a stack of magazines. Get him talking about the operation. That won't work, Amanda protested. He'll be suspicious. He'll check for recording devices. Then we need a better plan. And quickly, I insisted, trying to project a calm I definitely didn't feel. Amanda took a deep breath. I have an idea. We'll give him what he wants, the drugs and the notebook. Act like I simply misplaced them. Once he's gone, we'll figure out our next move. And just let him continue to threaten you and the kids? Walter asked incredulously. No, Amanda replied, a new determination hardening her features. But we need to buy time. She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. I've been documenting everything, taking photos of the drugs, recording conversations when I could do it safely, keeping a separate record of all transactions. It's all hidden in a secure cloud account. If anything happens to me or the kids, it gets automatically sent to multiple law enforcement agencies and news outlets. My heart swelled with pride, even through my fear. My daughter hadn't given in to this man's threats. She had been fighting back in her own careful way. Where are the drugs now? Amanda asked. In your car, I reminded her. In the center console. I'll need to give them to him, she said grimly, along with the notebook. It's the only way to get him to leave without suspecting anything. Walter shook his head. I don't like this. We're letting a criminal walk away. Not forever, Amanda assured him. Just long enough to ensure our safety. Headlights swept across the living room curtains as a vehicle pulled into our driveway. Amanda tensed, her hands curling into fists. That's him. Remember, act normal. Don't let him know we've talked about any of this. She moved toward the door, but I caught her arm. I'm not letting you face him alone, I said firmly. Mom, please. It's too dangerous. I'm your mother, I replied simply. That's never going to change, no matter how old you are. The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime incongruous with the tension filling our home. Walter moved to answer it, but Amanda rushed ahead of him. Let me, she insisted. He'll expect it. She opened the door to reveal a man in his early 50s, dressed in khaki pants and a polo shirt that did nothing to hide his muscular build. He looked like any other middle-aged father in our suburban neighborhood, the kind of man you'd see coaching Little League or grilling at a neighborhood barbecue. Nothing in his appearance suggested the monster Amanda had described. Amanda, he greeted her, his voice pleasant yet underlined with steel. I hope I'm not interrupting family time. Not at all, Tony, she replied, stepping back to let him enter. These are my parents, Walter and Mabel. Tony offered his hand to Walter, who hesitated almost imperceptibly before shaking it. Nice to meet you, sir. Amanda speaks highly of you. He turned to me with a smile that didn't reach his cold gray eyes. Mrs. Harrison. Lovely home you have here. Thank you, I managed to respond, fighting to keep my voice steady. Can I offer you some coffee or tea? No, thank you. I won't be staying long. Amanda and I just have some quick business to discuss. The way he emphasized the word business sent chills down my spine. I found my notebook, Amanda said, her voice artificially bright. It was in my car all along, and the, package you asked me to keep safe. Relief visibly washed over Tony's face. Wonderful. I was concerned when you called, saying you might have left it here. Everything's fine, Amanda assured him, though I could see the tension in her shoulders. Let me just grab my purse, and we can go outside to talk. Actually, Tony said, his eyes scanning the room, I'd prefer to stay here. Your parents seem like reasonable people. Perhaps it's time they understood the situation. Amanda went pale. Tony, that's not necessary. Oh, but I think it is. His hand moved to his waist, where I could now see the outline of what must be his service weapon beneath his untucked shirt. You see, I'm concerned you might have told them something you shouldn't have. Walter stepped forward protectively. Now, listen here. No, you listen. Tony cut him off, his pleasant demeanor evaporating. Your daughter has been helping me with a business arrangement. I need to ensure that arrangement remains confidential. By threatening her children? The words burst from me before I could stop them. Tony's eyes narrowed as they locked on mine. So she has been talking. That's disappointing. Leave my parents out of this, Amanda pleaded. They don't know anything important. I think they know enough, Tony replied coldly. He pulled out his phone, which means we have a problem. My heart hammered against my ribs as Tony typed something into his phone. A moment later, Amanda's phone buzzed with an incoming message. When she looked at it, her face drained of all color. "What is it?" Walter asked. With shaking hands, Amanda turned her phone to show us a photo of Penny and Thomas, clearly taken that day, sitting on our front porch during the family dinner. The message below read, "My partner is watching them right now. One word from me," and the message didn't finish the threat. It didn't need to. "You monster," I whispered. Tony shrugged. "Business is business. Now, Amanda, the package and the notebook, please." She moved toward the coffee table where the notebook lay, then froze as the distant wail of police sirens filled the air. Tony's head snapped up, his eyes widening. "What did you do?" he demanded, reaching for his gun. "Nothing," Amanda insisted, her eyes darting between Tony and the window where the flashing lights were now visible through the curtains. "I didn't call anyone." Tony drew his weapon, pointing it first at Amanda, then at Walter, and finally settling on me. My entire body went rigid with terror. In my 68 years, I had never had a gun pointed at me. The black metal looked impossibly threatening in the warm light of our living room. "Someone called the police," Tony growled, his earlier charm completely evaporated. "Someone in this room betrayed me." "Put the gun down," Walter said, his voice remarkably steady despite the circumstances. "You're making this worse for yourself." The sirens grew louder, and red and blue lights strobed across our front yard. Tony moved to the window, keeping his gun trained on us as he peered through a gap in the curtains. "3 patrol cars," he muttered, then turned back to us with fury in his eyes. "You set me up." "No one set you up," Amanda insisted. "Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe they're going to another house." Tony laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "In this neighborhood? On a Sunday night? Don't insult my intelligence." He grabbed the notebook from the coffee table and shoved it into his pocket. "Where are the drugs?" he demanded. "In my car," Amanda replied, "in the center console." "Give me your keys." With trembling hands, Amanda reached into her purse and extracted her key fob. "Tony," she said, her voice taking on a pleading tone, "think about what you're doing. You're a police officer. You can explain your presence here. Just put the gun away, and we'll figure this out." For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Then his expression hardened again. "It's too late for that. You think I don't know what 3 patrol cars mean? They're not responding to a noise complaint. Someone in this room made a call." The sound of car doors slamming came from outside, followed by the crackle of police radios. Tony backed toward the kitchen, gesturing with his gun for us to follow. "Is there a back door?" he asked, though it sounded more like a demand. Walter nodded. "Through the kitchen. All of you. Move. Now." We proceeded into the kitchen, Tony keeping the gun pointed at us the whole time. My mind raced, trying to understand what was happening. None of us had called the police. We had agreed it was too dangerous. So why were they here? Had a neighbor heard our raised voices and reported a disturbance? A loud knock came from the front door. "Police! Open up!" Tony's eyes narrowed. "Tell them everything's fine," he ordered Walter. "Tell them it was a mistake." Walter hesitated, and Tony pressed the gun against my temple. The cold metal made me gasp. "Tell them," Tony repeated, "or your wife dies." Walter moved toward the front of the house, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Tony kept his gun trained on me while maintaining his grip on Amanda's arm. I could feel my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. "Mom," Amanda whispered, her eyes locked on mine. "I'm so sorry I got you involved in this." "It's not your fault," I assured her, even with a gun to my head. "None of this is your fault." Walter's voice drifted from the entryway. "Officers, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Sir, we received information about a potential hostage situation at this address," came the firm reply. "We need to enter and ensure everyone's safety." Tony's face contorted with rage. "Hostage situation? Who called that in?" He dragged me closer to him, using me as a shield as he backed toward the rear door. Amanda moved with us, still in his grip. "I'll shoot her," he hissed at Amanda. "I swear I will. Tell them to back off." But instead of fear, I saw a strange calm settle over my daughter's features. She straightened her shoulders and met Tony's gaze directly. "No, you won't," she said with unexpected confidence. "Because if you do, you'll never make it out of here alive, and you know it." Tony's grip on my arm tightened painfully. "You don't think I'll do it?" "I think," Amanda said slowly, "that you've badly miscalculated. Internal Affairs has been building a case against you for months." Tony froze. "What did you say?" "Internal Affairs," Amanda repeated, her voice gaining strength. "They approached me 12 weeks ago, after another parent came forward. They asked for my help." Understanding dawned on me with stunning clarity. My daughter hadn't been a victim, she'd been working with law enforcement all along. "You're lying," Tony snarled, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Amanda shook her head. "Every meeting we had was recorded. Every package you gave me was photographed and documented before being handed over to the evidence room. Every person in that notebook was interviewed. The only thing they were missing was catching you in the act of threatening someone directly." She gestured to the room around us, "and now they have that too." Tony's face had gone ashen. "You're wired," he whispered. Amanda nodded. "Have been for months. Tonight's conversation is being transmitted to the officers outside right now." The front door crashed open, and footsteps thundered through our house. Tony's grip on me loosened just enough that I was able to wrench myself away, dropping to the floor as Walter had taught me during the self-defense class we had taken after his retirement. Everything happened so quickly after that. Police officers flooded the kitchen, weapons drawn, shouting for Tony to drop his gun. For a terrifying moment, I thought he might start shooting, that this would end in bloodshed on my recently polished tile floor. Instead, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The gun clattered to the ground, and officers rushed forward to secure it and place Tony in handcuffs. As they led him away, he looked back at Amanda, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief. "How long?" he asked. "How long were you working against me?" "From the second day," she replied steadily. "After you threatened my children, I went straight to Internal Affairs. Everything since then has been part of the investigation." As Tony was escorted out, a plainclothes officer approached Amanda. "Good work, Mrs. Russell. We got everything we needed." She nodded, then turned to us, tears filling her eyes. "Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you everything, but I couldn't." They said the fewer people who knew, the safer everyone would be. I rushed forward and pulled my daughter into my arms, holding her tightly as the reality of what had transpired washed over me. My Amanda hadn't fallen into a life of crime, she had been working to stop one. The relief was so overwhelming that my knees nearly buckled beneath me. "Your children," I gasped suddenly, remembering the threatening text. "Are they safe?" Amanda nodded against my shoulder. There was never a partner watching them. It was a bluff we were expecting. "Jackson and the kids are with 2 officers at our house, completely protected." Walter joined our embrace, his arms encircling both of us. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "We thought, we believed." "I couldn't," Amanda replied, pulling back to look at both of us. "The investigation was classified. If Tony had suspected I was working with Internal Affairs, he would have disappeared, and they might never have caught him. I had to play the role convincingly, which meant everyone, including you, had to believe I was involved." I thought back to the drugs I had found in my sewing box. So the drugs were what? Evidence? "Fake," Amanda explained. "The white powder was baking soda, and the pills were sugar tablets made to look like oxycodone. Internal Affairs provided them. I had to make it look realistic." As police officers continued to move through our house, taking photographs and collecting evidence, the full weight of what my daughter had endured these past months hit me. She had carried this burden alone, knowing her own parents might think the worst of her, all to protect her children and bring a corrupt officer to justice. "You are the bravest person I know," I told her, cupping her face in my hands the way I used to when she was small. "I am so proud to be your mother." The weeks following Tony's arrest were a whirlwind of statements, interviews, and legal proceedings. Our quiet suburban life was temporarily upended as our family found itself at the center of a major police corruption case. Reporters camped outside our house for days until Walter finally installed privacy screens around our yard. Amanda, as the key witness, spent countless hours with prosecutors, reviewing evidence and preparing for the eventual trial. The strain showed in the dark circles beneath her eyes, and the way her clothes hung even more loosely on her frame. But there was also a new strength in her posture, a quiet determination that reminded me of Walter in his younger years. 1 month after the arrest, our family gathered in my living room, along with several officers from Internal Affairs and the state police. The lead investigator, a stern-faced woman named Detective Sarah Carpenter, spread files across my coffee table. "Thanks to Mrs. Russell's cooperation," she explained, "using Amanda's married name, we've identified 17 other parents who were being blackmailed by Detective Mercer. Most were coerced through minor indiscretions he discovered during legitimate investigations, drug use in college, minor tax discrepancies, old DUIs that had been expunged. He had a talent for finding people's vulnerabilities." "How many officers were involved?" Walter asked, his faith in law enforcement deeply shaken by recent events. "Just 2 others," Detective Carpenter replied. "Mercer's partner, Detective Lawrence, and a patrol officer named Simmons, who helped cover their tracks. Both have been arrested and are facing multiple charges." I served coffee and my homemade lemon pound cake, finding comfort in the familiar routines of hospitality, even under these extraordinary circumstances. As I placed a slice in front of Amanda, she caught my hand and squeezed it gently. "The district attorney wanted me to tell you personally," Detective Carpenter continued, accepting a cup of coffee with a nod of thanks. "Amanda's work on this case was exceptional. Without her willingness to wear a wire and gather evidence for months, we might never have brought down Mercer's operation. They're recommending her for a civilian commendation," added another officer, a younger man whose name I couldn't recall. "It's the highest honor we can give to a civilian who assists law enforcement." Pride swelled in my chest, momentarily displacing the lingering fear and shock. My daughter, my Amanda, had not only protected her family, but had helped save numerous other families from Tony's predatory scheme. "When did Internal Affairs first approach you?" Walter asked Amanda, still trying to piece together the timeline of events. Amanda set down her coffee cup. 3 days after Tony first threatened me. I was terrified, especially when he mentioned knowing the kids' schedules. I went to drop Penny off at dance class and just broke down in the parking lot. Another mom, Diane Whitaker, noticed and came to check on me. Turns out she's married to the head of Internal Affairs. When I told her what was happening, she immediately connected me with her husband. "So that's why you started canceling family dinners," I realized. "You were meeting with investigators." Amanda nodded. "And why? I lost weight. The stress was overwhelming, playing a role while knowing what was at stake. There were days I could barely eat." Jackson put his arm around her shoulders. "I didn't even know until 2 weeks in," he admitted. "They wanted to limit how many people were aware of the operation. When she finally told me, I nearly went out of my mind with worry." "But you knew that night, when she came back to our house after Tony was arrested?" I asked him. "Yes," he confirmed. "I was at home with officers, watching the whole operation through Amanda's wire. The kids thought it was a movie night. We had them watching cartoons in the basement with an officer while I monitored everything upstairs." Penny and Thomas, who had been listening quietly from the corner of the room, moved closer to their mother. At 15 and 12, they were old enough to understand the broad strokes of what had happened, if not all the frightening details. "Is the bad policeman going to stay in jail?" Thomas asked, his young face serious. "Yes, sweetheart," Detective Carpenter answered, her stern expression softening. "He's facing multiple federal charges. He won't be getting out for a very, very long time." Penny leaned against her mother. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said simply. Amanda's eyes filled with tears as she pulled both children close. "I did it for you," she told them. "Everything was to keep you safe." Later that evening, after the officers had left and Jackson had taken the children home, Amanda stayed behind to help me clean up. Walter had retreated to his workshop, His way of processing emotional events always involved working with his hands. As we washed dishes side by side, I finally asked the question that had been lingering in my mind. Why my sewing box? Of all the places to plant evidence, why choose something so personal to me? Amanda passed me a rinsed plate. Tony insisted on it. He said it was the perfect place because no one would think to look there, and if the drugs were discovered, they'd be tied to you, not me. It was his way of ensuring I wouldn't betray him. He made it clear that if I went to the police, he'd make sure you and Dad were implicated. I shuddered at the calculated cruelty of it. And when I moved the drugs to your car, that nearly gave me a heart attack, Amanda admitted with a small laugh. The internal affairs team had been tracking those fake drugs for months. When I couldn't find them, I thought the whole operation might be compromised. I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified when you told me you'd moved them. I was just trying to protect you, I said softly. I had no idea what was really happening, but I knew I couldn't let you leave with drugs in your possession. Amanda set down the dish towel and turned to face me fully. That's the thing, Mom. Even believing the worst about me, your instinct was still to protect me. You didn't call the police or throw me out of your life. You tried to help me. You're my daughter, I replied simply. That doesn't change, no matter what. She pulled me into a tight embrace, and I felt the wetness of her tears against my cheek. I hated letting you think I'd fallen so far, she whispered. Seeing the disappointment in your eyes when you thought I was dealing drugs, it was the hardest part of the whole operation. And yet, you did it, I said, pulling back to look at her. You endured that, and so much more, to protect your children and help others. I've never been more proud. 2 months later, we attended a ceremony at the state police headquarters, where Amanda received her civilian commendation. The large conference room was filled with law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and the families who had been victimized by Tony's scheme. Walter wore his best suit, the one reserved for weddings and special occasions, and I had my hair professionally styled for the first time in years. As the police commissioner pinned the medal to Amanda's blazer, cameras flashed and applause filled the room. Her face, once strained with secrets and fear, now glowed with quiet pride. Jackson and the children stood nearby, beaming with admiration. Because of Mrs. Russell's extraordinary courage, the commissioner announced, a dangerous corruption scheme has been dismantled. 3 corrupt officers have been removed from our ranks, and countless families have been freed from coercion and fear. She exemplifies the best qualities of citizenship and service to community. More applause followed, and Amanda stepped to the podium to say a few words. As she thanked the officers who had worked with her and acknowledged the other families who had been victimized, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past few months. The antique sewing box that had been at the center of this drama now sat on my craft room shelf, restored to its rightful purpose. I had considered getting rid of it. So tainted had it become by its role in Tony's scheme, but Amanda convinced me to keep it. Let it remind us, she had said, that appearances can be deceiving, that terrible things can touch even the most innocent objects, but that in the end, truth and justice can still prevail. After the ceremony, our family gathered at our favorite restaurant to celebrate. As I looked around the table at Walter, Amanda, Jackson, Penny, and Thomas, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had faced something frightening and emerged not just intact, but somehow stronger, closer, more appreciative of one another. When we returned home that evening, Amanda accompanied me to the craft room, while Walter showed Jackson his latest woodworking project. She ran her fingers lightly over the lid of the sewing box. You know, she said thoughtfully, I used to watch you sew when I was little. I was always amazed at how you could create something beautiful out of scraps of fabric. That's what families do, I replied, taking her hand. We take the scraps of our experiences, the good and the bad, and stitch them together into something beautiful and strong. Amanda smiled, the metal on her blazer catching the light. I think that's what we've done, haven't we? Taken something awful and turned it into something meaningful. I nodded, my heart full. And that's the greatest lesson in all of this. No matter what challenges life throws at us, it's how we respond that defines us. You could have given in to fear, but instead, you chose courage. You could have protected only yourself, but you risked everything to help others. As we rejoined the others in the living room, I carried that thought with me. Life would continue to present challenges some expected, others coming as complete surprises. But I now had absolute faith in our family's ability to face whatever came our way, to recognize the truth even when it was hidden, and to stand firmly on the side of what was right, no matter the cost. Have you ever had a moment where your perception of someone close to you was completely changed? Where you discovered an entirely different side to someone you thought you knew completely? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find meaning in our family's journey. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the wisdom to see beyond appearances in your own relationships.